Well, we spent much of the day in the vast space of awareness. So this evening, let's come back to the ground with the soothing practice of Asanga's mindfulness breathing. So find a comfortable position and we'll go right into meditation. Begin as always with the release and relaxation of settling the body in its natural state. Your awareness now of tactile sensations is probably more subtle than it was at the beginning of the retreat. So you can discover more and more subtle areas of tension, areas of constriction. So wherever you discover these, coarse and subtle, let the breath be drawn to them and release them into space. Relax more and more deeply with each exhalation, while you maintain the clarity that you begin your meditation with. So especially here in the evening, it's still hot after dinner. Don't give in to the habitual association of deep relaxation and drowsiness. And settle the speech in its natural state. Of effortless silence. Feeling a contentment with that silence. Becoming more and more distant from the habit of filling every moment of silence with stimulation of one sort or another. And on the basis of this deep relaxation and clarity, and contented silence, settle the mind in its natural state. This is the essential nature of the mind. The upstream awareness of substrate consciousness. Luminous and knowing. Still and spacious. And able to illuminate appearances without becoming identified or fused with them. Now let this still, spacious awareness illuminate the entire field of tactile sensations. Become aware of sensations wherever they arise, within or on the body. In Indian philosophy, there are 4 types of tactile sensations. These are just called elements. There is the earth element, which is a feeling of solidity and firmness. So direct your awareness to these sensations of solidity and firmness, where your body is contacting the floor or your seat. The second class of sensations is sensations of the water element. This is fluidity, flowing, liquid. So feel the expression of that as a tactile sensation. Perhaps in perspiration or saliva in your mouth. This is a different sensation than solidity and firmness. The third type of sensation is called the fire element. This is the tactile experience of temperature. The entire continuum from heat to cold. So notice these sensations of heat as a tactile sensation rather than a conceptual experience. The fourth type of sensation is the air element, which is movement. So even while you are sitting still, you can experience movement. One of the things that you will notice most is the movement of the breath in and out of your body. So let the light of your awareness fill your entire body and illuminate these sensations of the breath wherever they occur. So we are not focusing on a particular place in the body, but simply with open, receptive awareness, experiencing sensations, perhaps in surprising places. Follow the full course of the inhalation and exhalation. From the beginning of each breath, through the middle, to the end, where you will find a pause at the end of each breath. Remain continuously engaged with this flow of the breath. By remaining continuously engaged with the sensations, wherever they occur in the body. So you may experience the beginning of the breath in the abdomen, for instance, and the end of the breath in the nostrils. Without looking for the breath, simply discover it. You can improve the stability of your mindfulness with the power of intention and introspection. So as you remain continuously engaged with the tactile sensations of the in and out breath, add your intention to remain continuously engaged. At the pause before the exhalation. The key to stability is the exhalation. Add intention at the beginning of the exhalation. And at the pause after the exhalation, add a quick glance of introspection. Simply looking to see whether you made it to the pause. Your introspection in this brief moment doesn't interrupt your continuous engagement. It simply is looking for the presence of excitation or laxity. and whether these are already present or they are on the verge of becoming present. If your mind has gone wandering for some period of time, and you need to reset your meditation, begin by releasing your grasp on the distracting appearance. Rejoice, I am lucid again. Feel that moment of pleasure. And know how different this moment of lucidity is from the previous moments of non-lucid wandering. Then return to your chosen object, which are the sensations of the breath wherever they occur in the body. And relax ever more deeply through the full course of the exhalation. I think we'll just go right into questions. And we have a number of French questions. We have one English question. What's that? Oh, English questions in there as well. Okay. Well, why don't we start with whichever language there is most of?
So some questions are more technical, and some are about the meaning, like yesterday.
Uh-huh.
So,
As you like.
So when you speak about meditation or calm-abiding upon the signs, does it mean that the meditation has an object? That it's a meditation on an object?
Yes. So, Shamata focused on a sign, is that the question?
Yes.
Ah. And
La question c'est bien la méditation, mais calme mental sur les signes. C'est pareil? Il y a autre question? Méditation sur les signes.
yeah.
La question c'est vous parlez de méditation sur les signes qu'est-il la méditation sur un objet?
Okay. Yes, that's correct. So Mahasiddha Maitripa said there are three types of shamatha. The first is shamatha focused on a sign. And the second is focused on conceptualization. And the third is shamatha focused on non-conceptualization. So I think technically you could say that both the first two actually are shamatha with a sign. Because being focused on conceptualization is also a sign. But Mahasiddha Maitripa here means something other than mental consciousness. So it is a nominal external object. And these signs then come in a great variety. There are pure signs and impure signs. The Mahasiddha Maitripa goes into this in quite a lot of detail. And then there are external signs and nominally internal signs. And so the sign that we are working with most is the tactile sensations of the breath. But there is also a visual sign as well. And this is the one that is the preferred sign of Gelugpas, for instance, which is the body of a deity. And especially for shamatha practice, it would be the body of Shakyamuni Buddha. Or it could be the body of your guru, the image of your guru. So both of these would be considered signs, even though one is just purely imaginary or visualized. And other signs are, like Padmasambhava said, a stick or a stone, the breath. And so the reason that we are choosing this particular object then of the breath is that this is the one that is most recommended if your chief obstacle that is preventing you from single-pointed awareness right now is discursiveness. And that term just means one thought after another. And so if your mind basically is a wandering mind, then the breath is the preferred object, and there's uniform opinion about that from the Buddha right on through Lama Tsongkhapa. So that's a very good external sign, and then that actually is classified as an impure sign. And it is then the pure signs are the ones, the images of deities or the image of Shakyamuni Buddha or your guru. So I'll read one here. So 3 questions. Please, only 1 question. So this is typical of what lamas say, right? And I have only 1 question, but it has 3 parts. What does the substrate consciousness is shared among us mean? What does the substrate consciousness is shared among us mean? It doesn't mean anything. And then the question continues, is there only one? Does one know everything as its nature? Is it something? Is it to, as its nature, is it to know, I think. I think that's right. Yeah, as its nature, is it to know? So no, there isn't one substrate consciousness. Because we all have our individual mind streams. And so this substrate consciousness and substrate are primordial. So there is no time in the history of the universe, such as the Big Bang 13.6 million years ago, or billion years ago, that substrate was created. It's said to be primordial. There is no time when consciousness didn't exist. And because you are a conscious being right now, there is no time in which your individual consciousness did not exist. It's amazing to contemplate, isn't it? So it is the conservation of consciousness. We have the conservation of mass and energy in physics, and in Buddhism we have the conservation of consciousness. It is never destroyed, it just keeps getting recycled through different bodies, through different realms. And it will continue. There is no time when your consciousness will go out of existence. And this is something that is very profound and challenging to modern materialist science. Because the prevailing opinion, well, I shouldn't say that, actually. The prevailing opinion in science, without a doubt, is that consciousness ends at death. But what's curious, when I was doing research for a book a few years ago, I ran across some research on the belief about this in the general population. And it is something like 92% of people in the world, roughly, and this was I believe it was a Gallup poll, but sampling people all over the world. And it ranged in, so 92% of people believe that their consciousness doesn't end at death. And most of those people, it varied from country to country. Christian countries would say that consciousness continues in heaven. Buddhist countries especially, and Hindu countries, and others that believe in reincarnation believe that consciousness continues in a new form and is reborn. And others had just an idea that somehow it continues. But what was interesting and it ranged from country to country, with something like 99% in India believing in continuity of consciousness, to I think England had the lowest, with something like 60% or something, or 55%. A lot of atheists there. And materialists, that was really the home of modern materialism with Thomas Huxley. So, but the vast majority, almost everyone among the general population believes in continuity of consciousness of one form or another. But that same study found that it was almost exactly the opposite in the American National Academy of Sciences. So among members, and this is a very, prestigious body to be elected to this group, and there it was something like 93% of all members of the Academy believe that consciousness ends at death. So there is a huge disconnect between what people generally believe and what is the prevailing scientific opinion. So it's good to just keep that in mind, I think, that for one, our opinion that continuity of consciousness actually is the mainstream opinion, even though all of the information that we hear in the media regarding science tells us just the opposite. So, back to the question. Is there only one substrate consciousness? No. You have your own individual consciousness, and the substrate actually is in Buddhism, in most schools of Buddhism, is said to be the way, let's just call it the vehicle, in which karmic seeds are transferred from one life to the next. And so you have not your individual identity obviously isn't going to survive death. The identity with your face, your name, your gender, all of that is part of your embodied experience. But all of the karma that you create moves on, carries on. And we can talk at another time, maybe, if there's time, about how that would work. What's a mechanism and contemporary metaphors for that. But when we get to pristine awareness now, the question gets a little more interesting. So when you become a fully awakened Buddha, does your consciousness merge into one great pool of consciousness? And are all Buddhas then just reflections, basically, of a single pool of consciousness? Or do they have their individual mind streams? Stay tuned. But we can definitely say that consciousness, the substrate consciousness, is individual and not one. Can you tell more about karmic energies? These are called samskaras in Sanskrit. So these are formations often called seeds. And so karma is a very, very difficult subject. And I'm not the only one to say that. Almost any Lama will tell you that this is the most difficult subject that there is probably in Buddhism. And His Holiness, in fact, said that when you teach the Lam Rim, that you should reverse the order, actually, for Westerners, and teach emptiness first, and karma last. Because emptiness is something that is very easy, I think, for Westerners to understand intellectually anyway, not necessarily to realize, but to understand intellectually. Makes perfect sense. It's very scientific that everything depends on causes and conditions. Everything is a dependent origination, therefore lacks inherent existence. All of that is very easy for us to understand conceptually. Karma, on the other hand, is very, very difficult to understand conceptually. This is called in Tibetan Shintakokyur, meaning deeply hidden. So it's not like the blue of the sky, which is obvious. It's not like emptiness, which is easy for reason to infer the truth. But this is something that is so deeply hidden, the truth of karma, that we are forced to rely on the words of enlightened beings explaining how this process works. And so this is why His Holiness said, start with emptiness, and then hopefully what will happen is that a person will say, well, you have just explained the ultimate nature of reality to me. So you are a trusted figure for me to, now when you talk about things that I can't understand, like karma, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. So it's said that basically, so karma is intention, it's often said, but so any action that is done with intention, very simply, is going to leave a karmic imprint. And then these imprints are stored in the substrate as information. So I think of these as karmic information quanta. So quanta being like photons in quantum theory. So they're little packets. So others, Tibetans call them karmic seeds. But, karmic information quanta, because that's what they are. They're information. And information, basically is stored in the substrate until causes and conditions are right for that seed to ripen. And that's, of course, where it gets mysterious, why this particular karmic seed ripens at this particular moment. There are a lot of factors that can empower a karmic seed to ripen more quickly, like the power of an object that it is done towards, the power of the motivation that it is done with, things like that. But, a lot of times the karma is described almost like a lottery. It's very difficult to know, and the one thing that we do know is that you can't control. You don't have any voluntary control over what karmic seed is going to ripen at any particular moment. And so our practice then largely becomes in planting virtuous karma so that we can stack the deck. In a sense, does that translate in French? It means like cheating in cards. So you stack the deck and know which cards are coming. And then, so if you have more virtuous seeds than non-virtuous seeds, and more powerful virtuous seeds than more powerful non-virtuous seeds, then hopefully there's a better chance of the virtuous seeds ripening more quickly. But a lot of our practice is planting virtuous seeds and then just recognizing that a lot of what is happening to us is beyond our control because we don't have control over the karma that is ripening. And then we just make sure that our response to the karmic seeds that are ripening are not non-virtuous. And then when we get to tomorrow's practice of settling the mind in its natural state, I hadn't planned to do this. So maybe I'll just, well, it would be better to do it after you have this practice. About how this practice actually leads to the mind being self-healing. So this is a very, very powerful practice, settling the mind in its natural state, or taking the impure mind as the path. Because the last thing that we want to do when an unfortunate karma ripens, a karma of suffering ripens, the last thing that we want to do is to replant it right away. It would be nice if that karmic seed were just finished and that whole theme were finished. But our response to the karmic seed that is ripened can actually replant the seed instantly. And so we don't want to do that. And the way that we do that, the way that we replant it, is by grasping to it. And grasping to an appearance of suffering as something other than an appearance of the mind, as something inherently existent out there, as some inherently existent suffering. And if we grasp to it in that way, dualistically and reifying it, then, and especially if we resist it and push it away because it is suffering, then what we are doing is replanting the seed, unfortunately. And so we need to have wisdom in dealing with these samskaras as they ripen. There is a lot more that can be said about that, but and Tibetan lamas are, and geshis especially, are, and khenpos are very well versed and very well schooled in these aspects of karma. And then also you see a very, if you're very interested in just pursuing that subject further, the Lamrim Chenmo also has an extensive section on karma. And there are many, many books on karma. But it is a broad topic and difficult, frankly. What is necessary to keep aware of awareness? To keep or be aware of awareness? So how do you maintain awareness of awareness? All that you need to do is not be distracted or become lax. So if you have no appearance, then, so here's a question for you. If there is nothing to be aware of, does awareness stop? If there's no object, is there no subject? If there's nothing to be aware of, what happens? Well, you don't need to do analysis. It's the good news. All you need to do is do this meditation and find out. And it may not happen, initially because you have to wear out a few cushions. But you definitely reach the point where you have an experience where there is only awareness and there is no appearance. And awareness itself is self-illuminating. So there are two elements or two aspects of consciousness. It is luminous and knowing. And so you have what, in awareness of awareness, what you are knowing is the luminosity of consciousness. And that's all. That's all that there is. And so as long as there are no distracting appearances to fill your mind or to take your awareness away from that, then you will remain aware of awareness. because awareness doesn't stop when there are no appearances. It's what remains after appearances stop. So, this is why it's a powerful Shamata practice, because it depends on excitation and laxity being absent, so that you are not distracted. So you aren't going to be able to maintain awareness of awareness. You aren't going to be able to maintain awareness of awareness if you are distracted by appearances, or if awareness has sunken into itself, into a state of unawareness. And this is what happens then when we go into deep dreamless sleep, or when we faint, or when we die and enter the black neuroattainment. So these are basically when awareness sinks into the substrate and we lose awareness entirely, then no more awareness. Your turn.
About the walk meditation.
Ah.
I want to know if there is a special posture, position to have with the hands, or what we have to do precisely.
Okay.
Standing meditation, sorry, not walking, standing.
Oh, standing meditation. Okay. Okay, yeah, good. So both of these are excellent questions for a hot day when our mind may become a little dull. And so remember, I'm so happy to see people standing, and I'm happy because people are recognizing their own laxity and they're doing something about it. The one thing that you don't want to do when laxity or dullness strikes is to just sit there and put up with it, or lie there and put up with it, and just try to get through the end of the session. So the important thing when laxity or dullness strikes is to apply an antidote immediately. And that is the role of intention. And so in the section of intention that I read in the Lam Rim Chenmo, where the topic heading was how intention acts to prevent excitation and laxity, what it meant there in other parts of that passage was that you have the intention to apply an antidote as soon as you discover excitation and laxity. So it doesn't do any good to notice that your mind is being distracted or that your mind has become lax if you don't apply an antidote to it. So it's funny because actually tonight I had planned to talk about antidotes, but decided no, I won't do that. It's too hot. So ideally, you will notice laxity as quickly as it arises, when there is just an absence of vividness or a vivid engagement with your object. And so if you notice it right away, because laxity and dullness occur in a progression. Excitation, you're off your object, you've lost it in an instant. But with laxity, you slide into it progressively. And so if you notice it in the first moment, your antidote can be very, very minor and not intrusive. And what you would hope, the ideal antidote, is one that remedies the problem, but without taking you away from your continuous engagement with your chosen object. So in order to do that, you have to notice excitation or laxity very, very quickly, right at the very beginning. And then if you do notice it, then you can do something like just elevate your gaze. If you're feeling lax, just slightly lax, you can elevate your gaze. So that is something that doesn't interrupt your continuous engagement with your object. Another thing that is very important when you notice laxity, and very simple and easy to do, is to notice your posture. So very likely if you're in the seated position and you're feeling lax, probably your head has begun to droop, your shoulders are sinking forward, and you've got a curvature of the spine. So all you have to do is sit upright and correct your posture, and you will feel a jolt of energy. And again, this doesn't require that you change your object of meditation. And so if you don't, there are others also you can, a very powerful one, especially now that we're getting into these advanced practices of awareness, and you now are familiar with this upstream consciousness that is luminous and spacious of substrate consciousness. So I asked earlier today if your mind is getting lax or is being distracted. Is that substrate consciousness or the configured mind? So laxity is happening in the configured mind. And a very powerful way of dealing with it that happens instantly also is to shift your point of view to outside the mind, upstream again, and you view the laxity of the mind as a mental appearance. It sounds weird, but it is really effective. And it can snap you out of laxity in an instant because you have now are resting in the awareness that is naturally luminous. And it is just so different than waking up from a nap, for instance, where you feel a little groggy and you have to kind of rouse yourself. When you're dealing with recovering from laxity, and even really on the verge of coarse dullness where you're about to lose your object entirely, you can change in an instant and your mind can become very bright and very clear. It's bizarre how quickly that happens. So when you don't catch excitation or laxity quickly, and you get to the point then that you're sitting on your cushion and your head, for instance, is beginning to nod, what is the one thing to remember? Don't just sit there and put up with it. Apply an antidote. And if you're on the verge of falling asleep, it's probably a very powerful antidote that you're going to have to use. And this is probably one that is going to momentarily interrupt your focus on your chosen object. But it's worth the investment. So this is the one time where it is okay to actually change your position while you are in a meditation session. And so if you are either lying down or you're seated and you're just battling drowsiness, then stand up and you will feel immediate relief, and it it will just feel so much more enjoyable because there's nothing more unpleasant than battling drowsiness in meditation. It's like falling asleep while you're driving and you're battling to stay on the road and catch yourself just as you're about to fall asleep again. It's a painful experience, and meditation can be like that. So apply a powerful antidote. And so if I see somebody stand up in the middle of a meditation session, I have to restrain my applause. It makes me so happy because this person has proven that they have recognized their own dullness and they have done something about it. They haven't just sat there through the entire session battling drowsiness, but they have applied a powerful antidote. So that is perfectly okay and encouraged, and please do stand up if you need to in order to get on with your meditation rather than just battle dullness. Now, when you're standing up, is there any technique to that? Very little. I say it's basically mountain pose or Tadasana. Isn't that right? Tadasana. In yoga. The yoga pose or posture, it's called mountain pose or Tadasana in Sanskrit. And so basically, your hands are at your side, your feet are hip width apart, weight evenly distributed on the balls and heels of your feet. And that's about it. The one thing you don't want to do is to lock your knees so that you might fall over in a faint if you do that. So maintain a little bit of flex in your knees. And then I find, because if you're in standing, you're probably going to want to have your eyes open. And especially if you haven't been meditating with your eyes open, that might be distracting for you. And so a very easy way to remedy that is to just turn and face the wall. And I experimented with that this afternoon, and this wall is great. Everything just becomes a blur. There's nothing to really grab your attention. And so even in seated posture, if facing into the room is distracting, and you're looking at the back of somebody who is moving or something like that, you can, my favorite at home, my favorite place to meditate is in front of a blank wall, not in front of an altar that has all kinds of icons and statues and things to look at. But a blank wall is perfect, and that's all that you need to set up a meditation place in your home. So that's about it. There's not much technique involved in standing meditation. And then for walking meditation, there is a lot that can be said about that. And I will say a little bit about it, and then maybe I will demonstrate a little. So the walking meditation is very powerful because, for one, it supplies the greatest amount of clarity on the continuum. This is a really wonderful way to rouse yourself. If you are, on our last day, we're going to be meditating all day long, basically, or you'll have the opportunity to if you choose. So rather than go take a nap, for instance, you might just choose to do walking meditation instead. And so that will definitely revive you. But it also is don't think of walking meditation as a break from meditation. this is a serious meditation practice of its own. And one of the real benefits of walking meditation is that you get to integrate both attention and awareness simultaneously. So in the classical approach to walking meditation, it is done with attention and typically focused on the soles of the feet. So tactile sensations on the soles of the feet rather than tactile sensations at the nostrils. And then the sensations are changing as you move your weight, and so these sensations are like the changing sensations of the breath. But also, you can't be so focused only on the sensations of the feet that your awareness collapses, because if you do, you will walk into something. Or you might just fall over. And so a couple of techniques for walking meditation. The whole point of walking meditation is to slow the pace down so slowly, to such a slow pace, that it feels like you have to intend basically every movement. And so it's the opposite of kind of automatic walking. And you can experiment with this when you first go out and do your walking meditation. Start very slow, with that classic just one foot after another, and completing each step before you begin the next step. And then start speeding up. And slowly start speeding up. And then you will notice a point right getting close to your normal walking speed where all of a sudden your mind just starts wandering, because walking becomes automatic then. And one of the things that we love to do when we're walking is just let our minds off the leash and just let them wander. And this is, it's so strange. It happens at a particular point, at a particular speed. And so you can notice this. So, okay, that's interesting. Then slow the speed back down so that you have to give intention to the each movement. And this is a way that you can really feel the power of intention and how it actually creates movement and motion of the mind. Because it feels like you have to intend raising the foot now, moving the foot, placing the foot. And if you lose attention, when you're going really, really slowly, it feels like your balance becomes a little precarious because of the slowness of it. And it can feel like if your attention wanders that you're going to fall over. So this is very, very powerful for integrating both awareness and attention. And then you can do a little variation also and do basically an Asanga's mindfulness of breathing approach to walking meditation. So let awareness fill your entire body and then just feel the sensations of walking wherever they occur in the body. And this is really enjoyable, very relaxing, and mesmerizing. This really keeps your awareness right in your body. And of course, the point of keeping your attention and awareness in the body on tactile sensations is that is the present moment then. Your mind won't be wandering off to the future or the past, chasing conceptions of fantasies or memories. So the technique basically is slow down, and then you actually slow down to the point where you complete one step before the last, or before you take the next. So it's very, very simple, and I see that a number of you are already very well practiced at it, and I've seen you out there. But And this is something that isn't taught among Tibetan Buddhists. I've never seen a Tibetan Lama doing walking meditation, but this is a standard part of Zen practice, for instance, and other Theravadins also do walking meditation. And so those are the experts in it. In Zen practice, it's you sit for a period and then do walking meditation, sit for a period, then do walking meditation. But so this is their basic technique. But they, if you want more information, consult somebody from those traditions. So you begin with the, first of all, you're slowing way down, and you, first of all, complete one step before you initiate the next step. So in skiing, this would be called total weight transfer. And so you totally transfer your weight to the front foot before you begin the initiation of the movement of the back foot. So that's as simple as that you just slow the pace down so that you totally transfer the weight before you begin the lifting, movement, and placement of the next. So that, very, very simple. And then there is three-part walking, where you are really beginning to break down the movement into three different phases. So the three phases are lifting, moving, and placing. And so you lift the rear foot, and that's a very distinctive phase with different tactile sensations. You move the foot, that has its own tactile sensations, and then you place the foot. And then you fully weight the foot, and then you initiate the whole sequence over again. Lifting, moving, placing. Three distinct phases. And then you just notice the placement is which gets weight first when you're placing the foot. Is it the heel or the ball? Does it depend on the length of your stride? All these different things that, because you're slowing down so much, you really have a chance to pay attention to all these things that become automatic. When, remember Erickson's comment about the top-down and bottom-up approach to monitoring your performance. Well, this is probably about the only time that you monitor your performance of walking. So you're giving it the top-down monitoring. So you're really practicing introspection while you're doing this. And then you notice that when you speed up, your mind automatically goes into the automatic. You just don't need to think about it at all. And so you don't. But it's only when you slow down, because it's so unnatural, that you actually have to use intention and attention, close attention, in order to stay upright. But very enjoyable, and there are wonderful places here to do it. And so I encourage you strongly to enjoy that, and especially if you're beginning to feel lax, a very, very good way to spend your time.
One is very short. The more I meditate, the less I want to come back to the world.
Well, I guess it depends on what world you're returning to. I think that's something that everyone who does especially longer retreats, but this retreat is probably going to be long enough so that you might not want to catch that train. But this reminds me of something that I heard when I was, when last winter, I led a 2-month retreat, basically this same retreat, but the same material, but expanded over 2 months. So really able to go into detail and lots of time for practice for the nuns of and other people from at Tosamling Nunnery in Dharamsala, India. And so it was of course, a wonderful time. I really enjoyed it tremendously. Felt really solid and strong in my practice. And then the retreat ended on the day before Losar. And so there was a tradition of the nuns of Tosamling would take gift baskets around to to some of the major monks and other very important figures around Dharamsala. So, we took a basket to His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, to Kandrala, etc., the abbot of Namgyal Monastery, and, the Karmapa's residence, but he wasn't there. Kandrala wasn't there. She was in Nepal, etc. But one of the baskets that we dropped off was at the residence of Serkong Rinpoche, the new emanation, he's 30 years old or so now, of the great Gelugpa master Serkong Rinpoche. So I think, many of you know about what a great Lama he was. He was the debate instructor for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So anyway, Serkong Rinpoche was he invited us in and served us tea and just, wanted to talk with us for a while. And he was very intrigued that this group of Westerners had just done a 2-month Shamata retreat. And so I just mentioned to him that it seemed like coming up to McLeodganj was like going to New York City. There was just so much activity and so much distraction. And I said, something like, I am already missing retreat. And he just looked at me and he said, are you sure that's not attachment? And, then he laughed, of course. But I thought, of course it is. And so there's a bodhisattva vow, actually, right, about not becoming attached to the peace of quiescence, of shamatha. And so, but it is so pleasant, isn't it? So this is our choice, basically. We could either be an arhat or we could be a Buddha. We could rest in nirvana. So, basically this is really, for our practice, these are our two choices, as we're pursuing shamatha. We can just rest. Once you get to non-conceptuality, luminosity, and bliss of shamatha, what's wrong with that? At the time of the Buddha, this was mistaken to be moksha, liberation. Because for the time that you are in shamatha, which if you develop samadhi and you're resting in the formless realm, that could be for days at a time. And so for all that time, there are no mental afflictions. It's peace, total peace. So this was the prevailing idea in India at the time, that samadhi was liberation. But the Buddha, because he was a prodigy, was able to master that in a short time, and he had two of the best teachers in northern India. And he realized that this wasn't sufficient, that when you came back down from samadhi, that your mental afflictions were still there waiting for you. And so he wanted permanent, irreversible freedom from mental afflictions, and realized that to do that there was something more than samadhi necessary. You had to fathom the nature of the mind to understand the nature of the mind and the ultimate nature of reality. And to do that required vipassana practice, the fusion of shamatha and vipassana. So because of that, then, and because of the Buddha took a different path, so in the Theravadan approach, when you achieve liberation, you achieve nirvana, and that is a state that's hard to talk about, hard to say, because among the best Theravadan scholars, apparently there is a divided opinion about this. And Alan Wallace has had long correspondence with one of the primary translators and very great scholar in the Theravadan tradition, Bhikkhu Bodhi. And apparently the prevailing, or the orthodox opinion anyway, among Theravadan scholars is that nirvana is extinction, that consciousness just ends. So you get, materialists get a much better deal. For materialists, consciousness ends and they don't have to do anything. You can enjoy your whole life. But, without going through all of the stages of shamatha, vipassana, direct perception of emptiness to achieve nirvana. But Bhikkhu Bodhi has his doubts about that. The Buddha actually describes, at least in a few places in the Pali Canon, positive attributes of nirvana. And so both Bhikkhu Bodhi and Alan knows the Pali Canon pretty well. And so he keeps citing these places and showing them, to Theravadan scholars. So, but the point is that nirvana is peace. And so this is, you could say, abiding nirvana. You are abiding in peace. But a Buddha isn't satisfied with that because it was bodhicitta and great compassion that is the primary cause of the omniscience of a Buddha, removing the mental. So you remove the mental affliction obstacles with nirvana, but not the obstacles to omniscience. And so it's said that compassion, bodhicitta, is the primary cause of developing the omniscience of a Buddha. And so because of the omniscience of a Buddha rests in non-abiding nirvana. So he isn't content to just rest in the peace of nirvana, of liberation, but he is aware of all of the suffering that continues for beings dwelling in samsara. And so he emanates then spontaneously with the nirmanakaya to be a benefit to sentient beings in whatever way is possible. So this is the non-abiding nirvana. And this should be the model for us also as we are practicing shamatha practice. So you could say that awareness of awareness, when we are just resting with awareness with no appearances, that would be a facsimile of nirvana. It is just peace with no appearances whatsoever. And then tomorrow, we're going to go back now to taking appearances as our object. And so this is that chaotic mind of yours that you may have come to retreat to try to escape. It's still there. And now that you have nothing else to do, it's going to really let you know what's on its mind. So this is non-abiding nirvana. You could say, basically, all of the appearances that are arising are a token of samsara, but whether they are samsara or not depends on our relationship to these appearances, and how, if we become fused with them and identify with them, then we believe that there's this dualism where I am over here and these appearances are arising over there, then samsara is perpetuated. But if we take the approach that we will be learning of simultaneous stillness and motion, and maintaining the stillness of our awareness while we watch appearances arise, abide, and dissolve, then we have a token, or our best facsimile, of non-abiding nirvana. We can still see all of the appearances arising without losing the peace of our samadhi. Was that the question? Oh, yeah, so finished with it.
In the same vein, about the kayas, the different kayas in the morning, in the prayers,
Ah,
the visualization,
yeah. Yeah. So I will just define it for you now so that you know what the prayers are saying. And then later, when we get to actually identifying pristine awareness, I will describe how these kayas, the three kayas, relate to your meditation experience, and how you actually realize these kayas that are already there, available to you, with your each facet of meditation, or each facet, you could say, of the several facets of pristine awareness, primordial consciousness. What each of those, how these three kayas manifest in pristine awareness. But for right now, the first, what we are doing, because the basic premise of Dzogchen is that the three bodies of a Buddha are already present in our own mind streams, our own awareness. And we don't know that because they are obscured. And so the first obscuration that we are removing is the identification with being the body of a sentient being. So that doesn't mean that we don't have a body, obviously, but it's a relative truth that obscures a much greater truth. And so our identification, unfortunately, doesn't recognize the greater truth, and it believes that this relative truth is the only truth there is. So it doesn't mean that ultimate truth, that I am Nirmanakaya ultimately, doesn't negate the fact that I have a body of a sentient being. But it just means that I am not that. Doesn't mean that I don't have a body of a sentient being. But the basis of designation of I is not inherent in the basis of designation. We have a choice about what I designate as I. And we'll get into that in our Vipassana practice in much more detail. So what is it that is obscuring Nirmanakaya from my experience right now? It is identification with being only the body of a sentient being. That's the truth and the whole truth. And so Nirmanakaya is often translated as emanation body. So you could say that it is the form, the form that a Buddha takes when he wants to communicate with sentient beings. So that is the Nirmanakaya. So, and spontaneous emanations, no effort required of the Buddha to do that. So that is Nirmanakaya. Then what is it that it obscures Sambhogakaya? It is our identification with being the speech of a sentient being, and as that being the only truth, and identifying with that I am only the speech of a sentient being, or my speech is only the speech of a sentient being, rather than the Vajra speech or the enlightened speech of a Buddha. And so Sambhogakaya is related to speech. Sambhogakaya is often translated as paradise body, or sometimes enjoyment body. But this is the body of a Buddha in his own paradise, or in own pure land. And this is something that is only available to, or can only be experienced, not by sentient beings, but by other Buddhas or Arya Bodhisattva, not Arya Bodhisattvas, but highly realized beings anyway, beings that are near Buddha, if not a Buddha, but very close to Buddhahood. So only those are able to perceive the Sambhogakaya of a Buddha. And this is when we go to a pure land like Sukhavati. This is, we will be receiving teachings from the Sambhogakaya of deities there like Amitabha. So those are, then the third kaya is Dharmakaya. And what is it that obscures Dharmakaya? That is our identification with being the mind of a sentient being. And that is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And so all of these thoughts, these mental afflictions, my memories, all of those are me. And I use that as the basis of designation. I designate that as me. And that is obviously going to obscure your realization of Dharmakaya. And so Dharmakaya is the mind of a Buddha. So emptiness. Svabhavakaya then is has different interpretations. So the way that I learned it first from Gelugpa Lamas was that it was the emptiness of the other three bodies. And then I forget, one of the Gelugpa nuns told me, she was a Kagyu nun actually, told me something different at Tosam Leng. But the way that it's regarded in Dzogchen is that it is, forget the English, the natural body, I think it is, of a Buddha. And basically it means that you have all three of these bodies, the Dharmakaya, the Nirmanakaya, and the Sambhogakaya, all in one package. And all of them are empty in this package. So something like that. So those are the three bodies of the Buddha and all in the package of Svabhavakaya. Yep.
So please remind us the remedy when we are spaced out.
Please remind us what when we're spaced out?
The remedy, the antidote maybe?
Oh.
When we are spaced out.
Aha. Well, so this is very important, very good question, especially when we are dealing with awareness of awareness. Because in the absence of stimulation, when you walk into a casino, is your mind lax? Are you falling asleep? No, there's brilliant clarity. So this is, we surround ourselves in our modern culture with stimulation, and it provides clarity. And so in the absence of stimulation, the habitual response might be that this is time to go to sleep. And so even though you might not be falling asleep or actually drowsy, You might still be aware of awareness, but not vividly engaged with it. There's just no vividness or clarity. So there's just this feeling of spaced out. I think, does that translate? But does that translate into French?
In French, it's like planning, like soaring somewhere in the sky.
Ah, yeah. So I think like that. There's just a fogginess, and so something a lot, it's more subtle than lethargy, which is a feeling of the body. It's just this spaced out, not vividly engaged. So what do you do about that? Well, the first method that should work quite well here is the one that I mentioned, is just to recognize that if you're feeling spaced out, is that substrate consciousness or is it configured mind? It's going to be configured mind, right? So you are basically not resting in substrate consciousness. And so just move your point of view upstream to substrate consciousness and just watch or witness the laxity as just another appearance of the configured mind. And it works really, really well. And you can go from laxity or spaced out like that to brilliant clarity because you are resting then again in the natural luminosity of the mind. And there is no waking up, slapping yourself with cold water or anything like that. It's just in the next instant. You're just brilliantly clear. And you may notice this also when you are in Shavasana, that you may go through this period where you are just so relaxed. And especially if you're doing awareness of awareness. And Shavasana is a very good position to do awareness of awareness because it is so relaxed. But it can lead to that sense of being spaced out. And then you might be right on the edge of falling asleep. And what are called in psychology hypnagogic images. Let's just call them dreamlike. And so I think we all know what that experience is like, right? You're just about to fall asleep and these images arise, but they are not dream images. They are a special class of images that occur. And there are some important differences. But anyway, these dream-like images come up. And if you can use that basically as recognition that you're about to fall asleep, and then basically just rouse yourself from that, you can go from that point to, again, brilliant clarity in an instant with no steps in between. It's bizarre how it happens, but it's a very common experience. So basically, if you're spaced out, if you're doing awareness of awareness, and you're just spaced out, then a very subtle antidote should suffice. So your eyes are open, so elevate your gaze. Shift your point of view upstream to substrate consciousness. Simple things like that. You can also, one of the classic antidotes for laxity is because what happens with laxity is that awareness is contracting and it is shrinking into itself and on the way to become the unawareness of substrate. So what you do is you just consciously expand and visualize, just expand your awareness into space and just recognize basically that your awareness has been contracting and then just expand it again into boundless space. You can also visualize a bright image. Those are said to be beneficial. But spaciousness is really the key. But with laxity or this spaced out feeling, because it doesn't require, you're not falling asleep, so it doesn't require a powerful antidote. It just requires one of these minor antidotes that doesn't really upset your awareness of awareness.
I don't feel my consciousness as luminous, but rather as empty and a bit sad.
As empty and a bit sad. So I don't feel my consciousness as luminous, but as empty and a bit sad. I think being empty, so if you were experiencing consciousness as empty, it wouldn't be sad, because sadness is an emotion. And so sadness is something that is experienced with the configured mind or mentation, and in very strong body components as well in emotion. But the point, I guess, that I should say first of all is that you're right. Because this person didn't say, my consciousness is empty and sad. But what the person said was, I feel my consciousness to be empty and sad rather than luminous. So, how can I dispute that? The person is right. I'm assuming that they are reporting correctly, that they don't have an experience of luminosity, and they do experience their mind as empty, and that could be a fuzzy term right now, but later, I hope by the end of this retreat, it will be a very precise term that you would use if you were saying, my mind is empty, that we all will know exactly what that means. And then a bit sad, that is an emotion or an emotional residue. So all of those things are correct in that the person has observed their experience and are simply reporting what they observe. So there is no wrong answer to that. There's no disputing the truth of your own experience unless you are lying to me about it for some reason. And why would anybody lie to me about your experience? So then the question is consciousness? So is consciousness empty and sad? Is consciousness luminous? And so here I will tell you then not what you need to experience, but what the great masters who have gone before us have experienced and are sending back as reports about the journey and the path. So they report that the essential nature of the mind is luminous, non-conceptual, and blissful. So that is the relative nature of the mind. And then all of the attributes of pristine awareness, which pristine awareness being ineffable, meaning beyond description, they have to resort to metaphors. And we'll describe that later. So I can tell you that the masters say that the mind, its essential nature is luminous. And if you aren't experiencing that yet, I think you're probably in good company. So I think many people would report that same thing, that their mind doesn't feel luminous, because luminosity is something that you discover as you wear out cushions. And one thing that it feels like, the luminosity, one way it expresses itself, is as vividness, as clarity. But then you might just ask yourself, as you're feeling an absence of luminosity, basically, maybe am I misunderstanding what luminosity refers to? Because are there appearances appearing to me right now? And you can answer that with your own experience as well. And if there are appearances arising in awareness, you are experiencing the luminosity of awareness. And there is a point at which all appearances are going to appear to you exactly that way. And until then, we take it that this is the word of the people who have succeeded in this path. This is what they are sending back as reports, that all appearances are simply an expression of the mind's luminosity. So if you're experiencing appearances, you're experiencing the luminosity of the mind.
Is the substract consciousness, is it the same as the one which is described in the class about the tenets, and particularly the Shamata school, the Alaya-Vijnana?
So is it described in the class about tenets? Yeah. So I have to confess my ignorance about that particular class, because I've never taken that class that was described as that, so I don't know exactly how that would be. So you might have to ask one of your colleagues who has taken the class about that, whether it's what we're describing is the same. Basically, you don't find much respect for the Alaya and Alaya Vijnana in the new translation schools, or aside from Mahamudra. And there are reasons. The reason that I have heard for that is that it is believed that the Chittamatran school, or the mind-only school, posited that the kunchi, or the alaya, is self-existent. So that causes a real problem with Majjhimika, or Majjhimika Prasangika. So that obviously isn't going to, if that's what it is, then basically most of what you hear about from Lama Tsongkhapa, for instance, in his discussing or bringing that term up, is to refute it and to refute its self-existence. But in Dzogchen is just perfectly enmeshed in Majjhimika Prasangika. There's no contradiction whatsoever. And basically, there's no reason that you have to say, and Chittamatrans, I think, would say, they don't say that the kunchi is self-existent. But it's a label, or it's a position that has been described of theirs. But Dzogchen just says, no, there's no contradiction. There's the Alaya and Alaya Vijnana are dependently originated. So they're end of story. So there's no contradiction there. And are they the same? Probably not, is what you heard in the tenets. What is the same is what is called the Bhavanga in the Pali Canon. And that is the same as the Alaya. And so there in the Pali Canon, the Bhavanga is not differentiated between consciousness and the substrate. So substrate and substrate consciousness. There's just one bhavanga. Yeah. So comparing it with what you already know, I'll have to leave to you and your colleagues.
A long one?
Oh, it's a good thing we got started early.
When I manage to settle the natural state of mind, I feel that my body is parcouru, is filled by energetic flows, energetic ondulations or courant d'énergie. Courant, comment on dit courant? Flow. Flow. Energetic flow. How do you explain that?
Well, the first question would be, are these the energy flows? Are you hearing them? Are you seeing them? Are you smelling them? Are you tasting them? Are you visualizing them? No, 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 no. What's the last possibility? Are you feeling them as a tactile sensation? So I think that's how these energy in the body is felt, is as a tactile sensation. And so one thing that I didn't mention in the meditation that we did, these 4 elements, there are actually 5, space being the 5th, but these 4 elements arise within space. And it's what's interesting in Tibetan Indian philosophy is that this is the full range of tactile sensations. So it's like a palate, that you can taste. There are a limited number of tastes that are available to us. And so there are a limited number of these tactile sensations. But almost every sensation is a combination of these various elements. So there are many, many possibilities. For instance, think about pain, for instance. It might feel like a knot in your back, the earth element. It might also be heat, so a searing pain, so the fire element. It might be throbbing or spasming, and that would be the air element. So all of these combining into a single sensation. So the sensation of energy coursing through the body would be a very complex experience of probably largely of motion and movement, I would think, of the air element. But so you can simply notice in your meditation what it feels like, and these elements, probably largely movement, I would think, and maybe with an intensity of movement, variations of intensity. So what is it actually that is you have settled the mind in its natural state? That was the you have settled the mind in its natural state. So this is a state that is non-conceptual. And this is a state that in which if you are really settled in the natural state of the mind, then there are no conceptual distractions. And so you might be able to feel things in your body, for instance, that you wouldn't be able to experience when your mind is distracted. And so is the experience of the body, well, are tactile sensations conceptual or non-conceptual? They're non-conceptual, aren't they? All of the 5 primary sense consciousnesses are non-conceptual. And it's only the mental consciousness that, when it gets involved with one of the sense consciousnesses, that turns it into a conceptual experience. But the basic primary consciousness itself is non-conceptual. And so when you are experiencing, when you're resting in the natural state of the mind, non-conceptual experience, you might have more non-conceptual experience of the body available to you as tactile sensations. And so what is it that you are feeling, these energetic waves? What actually is it? Well, my first impression would be that it is the movement of prana. And so the movement of prana, Shamata is a very, very powerful tool for doing subtle body practice. So in the subtle body practice of tantras and of various yoga practices, the whole point is to move prana throughout the body. And frankly, the way that I have heard this taught most, and I've had extensive teachings on this, is actually as visualization. And so Shamata gives us another choice. And I think, frankly, that this choice is more powerful. And that is that you can experience prana not as a visualization of prana, of energy moving through visualized channels to a visualized spot on a schematic of a body, but rather as a tactile sensation in your own body. And for most people, these will be very, very, very subtle tactile sensations. And so if you are feeling the movement of prana as a powerful experience, terrific. And don't become attached to it, because it will change. But it's a very good skill to have, a good capacity to have, to be able to experience the movement of prana as a tactile sensation. And this is exactly what Master Asanga asks us to do, is to notice the fluctuations of prana associated with the breath as well. And interestingly, just as a footnote, because usually I really enjoy teaching the culminating phase of shamatha, which is the achievement of mental and physical pliancy. But we won't have time to do that in this short retreat. So I'll just tell you something that is very important about that. And Lama Tsongkhapa and Arya Asanga both refer to this in their presentations on pliancy. And that is that pliancy is prana. Simple as that, really. Or it's the result. Pliancy, there's mental and physical pliancy, but really what brings it about is prana. And so what you might be experiencing also, pliancy is often experienced, both mental and physical pliancy. One of the qualities of that is bliss. And so Lama Tsongkhapa, I think it was, that pointed out, for the first 20 years or so of shamatha presentations that I had heard, I thought that, at least I understood it, whether it was said that way or not, the way that I understood it was that pliancy just happens when you achieve shamatha, and before that there is no pliancy. But Lama Tsongkhapa points out that pliancy and single-pointedness go hand in hand. They're entangled. And so as your single-pointedness becomes more single-pointed, your pliancy is going to increase. You're going to begin to feel pliancy. And he says in the very beginning, pliancy is obscured. It's there, but you don't feel it. Then as your single-pointedness improves, so certainly by level 4, you're beginning to feel good about this breath meditation. There's actually there's a sense of bliss associated with single-pointedness. And also, single-pointedness supports the development of pliancy. So, until at level 7 of Shamata, the early stages are powered by mindfulness, then introspection, levels 5 and 6, and then level 7, what powers it is, you could say, bliss. It's called enjoyment, typically translated as enjoyment. But what's beginning to happen here, obviously, is that your stability and vividness is reaching a point where the pliancy now is really becoming very noticeable. And this becomes a major support of your practice. Because if you have experienced bliss, one thing that you know is that it is very good for stability, very good for single-pointedness. Because if you're experiencing bliss, your mind doesn't want to go anywhere else, looking for something more attractive or more important. Your mind just wants to stay right there with the bliss. And the problem, rather, is not distraction, but it becomes attachment. So, it could be that what you're beginning to experience also, as you're resting in the natural state of the mind, is greater single-pointedness, and so this is being experienced as pliancy, bliss, moving throughout the body in waves as well. Another possibility, but those are some things just to think about as you are experiencing it, and it could be something different also. But those would be the likely candidates in my mind right now.
During the meditation, when we try to recognize stillness and movement, if the stillness is disturbed by an excessive amount of movement and thoughts, can we use the breath, especially the exhalation, in order to recover the stillness?
Yes, very, very good observation. We're going to go into simultaneous stillness and motion tomorrow. So hopefully all of that will become more clear. But one of the ways that you can, while you are resting, especially in this awareness of awareness, remember the goal is to note appearances in the instant that they arise. And if you do that, they may not fully form. They may just dissolve instantly and not become a complete thought or a complete memory, or it's just this slight disturbance. But if you aren't able to note appearances in the instant that they arise, and they fully form, and they begin to proliferate also, meaning that they are replicating themselves, then what you do as soon as you notice them, the thing to do is to just release the distracting thought on the exhalation, exactly as this person observed. Anything else?
yesterday you talked about the 9 levels of Shamata, but you only mentioned 4.
Yeah.
What are the following ones?
5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So at level 5, you can consult the, in English anyway, you can consult it, do you have your chart with you? Thank you. So level 5 is called tamed attention. Level 6 is called pacified attention. Level 7 is called fully pacified attention. Level 8 is called single-pointed attention. And level 9 is called attentional balance. Okay, good. And you have that in French. Yeah, good. So basically, as you're progressing through these stages, what you are doing in the first 4 stages is dealing with coarse excitation. So there are 3 levels of excitation and 3 levels of laxity. Sometimes some schools say only 2 of each, but Lama Allen's approach says 3. Coarse, medium, and subtle, excitation and laxity. And so for the first 4 levels of shamatha, you are dealing with coarse excitation. So the definition of coarse excitation and coarse laxity both is that you lose your object completely. So at level 4 then, you are no longer losing your object entirely. It's a bit of a story about what's actually going on there, because there are concentric rings of attention around the target center, and you're with medium excitation. So with coarse excitation, you're not on the target at all. With medium excitation, an unchosen object, let's just say a distracting thought, is in the center of your attention, but in a peripheral ring around the center of attention is your chosen object, let's say the sensations of the breath. And you are toggling, you're going back and forth very quickly, because in a finger snap, there are 64 karmic ripenings. So 64 potential individual movements of mind in that brief of time. And cognitive science says basically the same thing, that there are moments, discrete moments of mind, rather than a flow of consciousness. There are just, like the frames of a movie, the projection is happening so fast that it appears to be in motion, but they are actually individual moments. So with these individual moments then, you're moving back and forth between your chosen object out in periphery and your chosen object in the center, that you can say that you haven't lost your chosen object entirely, but it's not single-pointedness. It's medium excitation because the unchosen object is in the center. So that's would be level 6 of medium excitation. And then subtle excitation is when your chosen object is in the center, but an unchosen object is in periphery and you're going back and forth. So it's still not single-pointedness either. And then vividness, or with laxity, it is with coarse dullness, you're losing your object altogether. With medium dullness or laxity. You don't lose your object, but you're not vividly engaged. And then with subtle laxity, it's just requires a little tuning, like the tuning of a guitar string, just a little tightening up. So basically you're just tuning the attention to eliminate the subtlest laxity. And that's basically the difference between the stages. Then at level 8 you get single pointedness, meaning that there's no more periphery, there's only the center of the bullseye, but there's a little bit of effort required. And then level 9, there's no effort required. You just sit down and you enter samadhi. So that's basically a very quick tour of the 9 stages. But each of them has some interesting things going on that we won't go into in detail right now. Are there more? 3 more? I think we'd better save those for tomorrow. Mercy. Or merci. Well, it is a great mass of good merit that you created with your virtue today, your powerful motivation, and your dedicated practice has created karma that will surely ripen with goodness. But may this powerful karma ripen not as pleasure for yourself, because this pleasure comes and it goes. So we dedicate this merit to the highest good for all beings. So may all beings discover the path to authentic happiness. May all beings find authentic teachers to guide them on the path. May all of our lamas and gurus have long lives. And may all beings reach the culmination of the path, the fully awakened state. So that suffering is eliminated from the world forever. May it be so by the goodness of what you have done today. Soha.